is the show. We've worked for months for this. So Lisa, Cheryl, thanks so much for joining us today on the CRE Project podcast. We're really excited to have you guys on, two very seasoned professionals that I've had the pleasure to work with historically. So, and I know Gannon is new to you all, but he is an exceptional co-host, and we've been talking about this show for a long time. We're excited just because a lot of our shows are more developer driven and not so user driven. So we've really been trying hard to get some real estate managers on, and what better ladies to have on than you two. So thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here.
Yeah, no, thanks. So to start off, would really like to hear from both of you on how you got into the real estate game, who you've worked for historically, and how you ended up kind of, you know, being a real estate manager for some of the largest corporations really in the world. So Cheryl, why don't you start us off?
So I'll start. So I didn't pursue a career in real estate, but when I finished college, I ended up in, I was call it Orange County, California. And I was, you know, back in the day, this is going to date me. I was looking at the classified ads in the paper, and I found a job for, and I think it was a property manager for Carl Karcher Enterprises. And I thought, well, that would be kind of cool. Carl's Jr. I mean, we all, you know, yeah. Carl started in Anaheim. And so I took my business degree, and, you know, because they wanted you to have an accounting background, and then, well, there we go. And I applied for a property manager for Carl Karcher Enterprises, which was under their real estate division. Mm-hmm. And that was, you know, that was in, I'm really going to date myself, that was in 1984. And the nice thing about working for a large company, which I'm sure Lisa will be able to speak to, you can move around within the company in all variety of roles. You can be in accounting, you can be in franchise, you can be in real estate, you can be in asset management. So I got to learn all the aspects of a deal, which I really felt made me a really good real estate director, real estate manager. You know, if you know the worst case scenarios that can come from a site that fails, meaning you're disposing of it, mm-hmm. then you know what to look for as you're going forward to new sites. So I think getting all of that experience in property management, asset management, disposition, and acquisition, it just kind of made me a perfect candidate for the role. And I will say my favorite role is the acquisition side. I think that's where all the fun happens.
Yeah, so much fun. So you started at Carl's, and then who have you kind of worked for too?
So I started at Carl's, and I rode a long wave, 19 years. And one of the girls I'd worked with at Carl's was at Wendy's, and she was saying, oh, this is just like Carl's was in the early days. Come on over, join. So she convinced me, and I was at a kind of a critical point in my life where I said, if I don't make a change, I'll probably never make a change. So now would be the perfect time. So I joined Wendy's, and Wendy's is where I met Lisa. Lisa was my boss at Wendy's.
Oh, there we go.
And Wendy's was a great, also very much like Carl Karcher Enterprise, Carl's Jr., very big company, all the departments to assist you in your growth, et cetera, et cetera. So it was another great company to work for. But then they were in the midst of a merger and acquisition with, like, it was the Wendy's Arby's group. And it came to the year end, and it was time for us to do our performance review. So I pulled out my site ride folder, and I opened it up, and there was nothing in it. So I called Kathy, and said, my counterpart, said, hey, how many site rides do you show that we did last year? She goes, oh, let me check and see. She opens up her folder and says, none. I go, how long are they going to keep us to not work? And it was really funny because they were telling us, don't leave, don't leave. It's all going to settle down. But when you're a deal junkie and you want to make a deal,
Yeah.
sitting on the sidelines and not doing anything is a little, it's disheartening and it's scary and you get anxious. So at the time, the person that hired me at Carl's in 1984 was senior VP of development at El Pollo Loco. And he kept saying, come over here, we're doing deals, we got so much going on. And so I actually just said, hey, I want to make the deals. So I took the position, and that's been 14 years ago almost. Yeah, 14 years, more than 14. So I'm almost doubling my Carl Karcher 10 years.
Yeah. Awesome.
So that's
So
it.
definitely well seasoned. So
Very
and
well.
we found out that Lisa's your boss. So
Twice.
Twice. Because
Yeah.
she joined El Pollo Loco as my boss.
Yeah. What about you, Lisa? How'd you get in the business?
Yeah, I have actually a very similar situation. I was living in Denton, and I think it was a referral. I think someone I knew was at Sally Beauty, which is a very small tenant retailer, and they were hiring for somebody to run their property management, which I knew nothing about. But they trained me, and I handled their renewals, which was a big piece of what we were doing. It was early 90s, so we were coming through a recession, and we were renegotiating all of our existing leases, and I was very successful at reducing the rent or keeping it the same there. So they elevated me into a deal making spot, which I didn't do for I ended up there 3 years in several different positions, but then I left and worked for another retailer, and then I got hired by Wendy's, and I was at Wendy's for 12 years, deal making for, I don't know, 5 or 6, and then in a couple different management roles. I had the deal making team. As fun as deal making is, it's even funner when you have a great team, because they make you look good every day. And Cheryl was a big part of that. Kathy, who she mentioned, we had the dream team. It was really great. We had Southern California, and then slowly as things changed, I had more geography, and I ended up, through the Wendy's Arby's merge, helping out at corporate actually. And then I went to a couple of different places. I went to a sandwich chain called Wich, which is here in Dallas. I was tired of working for a company that wasn't headquartered where I live, because that got complicated. Then I went to work for Corner Bakery, which is also headquartered here in Dallas. And then I got a phone call about El Pollo Loco. We're getting the band back together and doing deals over at the Crazy Chicken. So come over and do deals here. And you can I was a player coach. So I did deals, in Texas and New Mexico, tried to.
Yeah.
And then I oversaw the real estate team, which was really Cheryl and some great other people in the office. So and I was there for, I don't know, 3.5 years. And then since then I've been at McDonald's, the biggest real estate chain, real estate brand in the world that happens to sell burgers. So I've been here a little over 2.5 years. Just having a ball. It's, there's nothing McDonald's hasn't seen before.
Oh yeah.
There's no unique situations really, and just a depth of people to counsel with when you've got something that you need help with.
Yeah. Well, that's both you guys, again, just very well accomplished, and it's interesting just the different companies that you worked for, kind of from really the start, fruition with the Carl's days, and then obviously a big huge growth pattern with Wendy's, it sounded like, and now obviously 2 established brands like El Pollo Loco and McDonald's.
And it's also interesting because a lot of people go from brokerage into that role, but it doesn't sound like either of you ever did.
It was more property
transactional
management.
brokerage. Yeah.
Kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So what so let's talk a little bit about the role in general, and the role that it plays kind of in a daily commercial real estate space. So for those listeners that aren't necessarily familiar with retail real estate and corporate site selection, what exactly are you guys responsible for right now within McDonald's and El Pollo Loco?
Yeah, I'll go first. I did deals at McDonald's for, I don't know, 2.25 years. And I've recently been elevated, and now I've got part of the country. So I oversee a strong group of deal makers that are in the Southwest. And that's really primarily I have been in deal making and overseeing deal making for the last really 28 years or so.
And I've, so my role has remained the same even as the title has changed. I work with brokers, and so I always look for the best brokers, which is why I ended up with you, Clay, and Albuquerque. When I was looking at the market, and actually Lisa actually found you first, so I should give her the kudos and credit. But and I rely very heavily on brokers because I handle a huge geography. And right now, as it sits, I'm the one and only real estate acquisition person at El Pollo Loco.
Yeah.
So I'm covering the company. What we do on my end is I find all the company locations. And again, I use a field of brokers, and our company markets are Southern California, Las Vegas, Nevada. Really, I think that's kind of the two company markets. That's where our primary attention is. Almost everything else is franchise. So there's a lot of growth coming from franchisees in Salt Lake City and in Dallas, Texas, and in Louisiana, Lafayette, Baton Rouge. In fact, our Baton Rouge store is opening. It might be opening as we speak right now. It got a couple delays, but I think it's opening right now today.
Yeah.
So it's Jason's second store, Lisa. So that's exciting. And so I support the franchisees, and now we've signed a couple of new franchisees. They're existing in the system, but we signed a couple new guys in the Denver market. So I've been to Denver a couple times since those franchise agreements development agreements were being negotiated, and looking at some of the real estate.
Yeah.
And so I start from the beginning. So when on company stores, I negotiate the LOI, I get it to the finished stage, and then I kind of pass the baton to my construction counterpart, who does the site investigation, determines how long, how much everything's going to take. And then we put that together and present it to the executive board, the real estate site approval committee, which we call RESAC. And once it gets approved, we launch into entitling. And typically while we're in the prepping it for RESAC, we're negotiating leases as well. So, and we don't do much in the way of purchase, just because nobody's really selling. We find that it's very hard to find, I know McDonald's finds them, but we just don't find much in the way of sales.
It's tough right now. I mean, it's very tough. And I know it's market by market, but especially in our local market in New Mexico, it's very tight, and it's very, very difficult to acquire dirt right now. So everything seems to be for ground lease or build a suit. So, and the reason I ask that question is because a lot of times people don't understand just how much you guys really do on the corporate site selection side. And it's a whole other thing when it comes to actually managing franchisees as well. That's like a whole other arm, and it really, really keeps you guys busy. So it's not necessarily just flying out doing site tours, but it's also the full negotiation process, and oftentimes working all the way through the approval periods and everything else when it comes to leases. So it's pretty involved. Let me ask you, Lisa, what do you like most about being a real estate manager?
Well, it's the deal junkie thing. It's an adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
We're definitely the sought after party. We get a little bit wined and dined
Pretty
at
girl
the
at the dance,
conferences.
man.
We all so much fun. I mean, we get invited to the fun parties, and everybody wants time with us because we're the ones that pay the rent and do the deal. So that piece of it's always been really fun. I love that. My favorite thing I will say is 2 years later, or however long it takes to get these transactions built and open and selling burgers or chicken, my favorite thing is to drive by and see the city officials and the tax revenue that we create. And it's just the very, very beginning of a 60 or 80 year business being open in these towns and at these intersections. And it to be on the very, very front end of that, looking at raw dirt or a old building that we're going to take down and build a beautiful building with arches. I mean, it still gives me a thrill to see that on every single site.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I've said that time and time again. That's what I love about what we do, is it's a little daunting to think about, but the decisions that we make and the decisions that we have influence in really affects the community for decades, because they're seeing this building and this product and they're driving by it on a daily basis. So there is a real sense of responsibility in what we do. And there's a sense of fulfillment too, because like to your point, if you go into a market and you bring a service that's new to that market, it's exciting and you were a part of that. If you are going into a market where there's a lot of rundown real estate and you demo some stuff and you build a brand new building, that's exciting. So it's really a fun part of what we do. What do you think, Cheryl? What do you enjoy the most?
I think I do. I think what I enjoy the most is seeing a site in its infancy stages, even where people, Lisa will remember we were on some site rides where they're like, I just don't get it. I don't see it. And I go, no, you got to trust me on this. I mean, and we align this, El Pollo Loco likes to be around daily needs centers. I mean, the best are Walmart's, Targets, grocery, anything that's triggering a trip inside and by the restaurant is going to usually equal somebody stopping to take the food, home. So to look at it in an infancy stage, to see it all come together, open up and be this kind of entire, development project, it's very exciting. And to go, I have the vision to know that this was going to be, this is going to work. Because sometimes you get out there and there's nobody, there's no homes, you got to show housing maps. So
Yeah.
it's seeing it from the infancy stage to the opening and the sense of accomplishment when you get to that stage, kind of being there when they ribbon cut and meeting the mayor and the fire department and the police and the schools, because we do invest in school programs and all those kind of things. So it's just nice to be, somebody that's giving back to the community that you're opening in. Yeah.
And to your point, sometimes you got to be like 2 to 3 years kind of ahead of time, right? Before
way ahead of time.
So there's definitely a sales component to what we do. There is no doubt in that. What is, on the flip side, what's the most difficult thing that you guys run up against?
Well, deals have just gotten so very complicated. I think everybody on this call knows that, the complexity is extreme. McDonald's, thankfully, is, not adverse to paying a land use attorney if it's necessary. I've got a couple of instances where we're a permitted use, but city council still has, or neighborhood opposition has got city council's ear, and we still can't get, we can't get through the process. So McDonald's is not afraid to bring in the right people to help us, go through the process and get what we can done. But it's all gotten very complicated at Wendy's. When I was doing deals in Texas, which is still friendlier than most, and you could buy an acre and it was you could build a prototype, and it was a very simple process and really, really inexpensive comparatively. It's always been much more complicated when you move to either coast, really. It just gets more complicated as you push out. And so, you get into the San Francisco Bay and LA, and you get so much opposition. There's so little land, and there's so much opposition to what we're trying to build. It's just very complicated.
There's also, I kind of agree with all of that. I would say that for the most part, we target pads and centers, so the use is already in place. Mm-hmm. Because like Lisa said, we're home based in Costa Mesa, California. So we've lived the dream of entitling properties that, there is some resistance. The other component that we're facing probably today, that everyone's facing today, are what I would call the COVID residuals. So we've got nobody's back in an office. Our offices are not yet opened. They're scheduled now to open sometime in January. And planners and city offices, they're doing everything electronically, so everything's taking longer. Then when you combine, so whatever timeframes you negotiated at the front end really went out the door starting in March of 2020, and it hasn't really corrected. So now we have, it's not, a newsflash for anybody. If you live on the coast, I'm in Dana Point. I can see cargo ships hanging out there. There's tons of cargo ships. So now we're in a supply chain issue. We've got, not only as it relates to equipment, but even product. So we're at a perfect storm. Hard to get employees. You got to pay them a lot of money. You can't build restaurants for cheap. So everything's going sky high. But we're still committed and we're still doing deals. And most landlords and developers are aware and they'll work with you. So that's the good news. And I would go back, kind of regress a little bit. When we start these relationships with these people, there's a built trust. And then when you come back to them and say, hey, here's what's happening, they trust you. So they're more willing to work with you in a scenario that, unanticipated delays.
Yeah. I'm curious, because both of you guys kind of mentioned this, but specifically you, Lisa, is just how complex deals have kind of gotten at this point. And I'd really like, again, because a lot of our audience, it's a commercial real estate audience, but a lot of them don't do corporate site selection. So how throughout your decades of your career has deals gotten more complex specifically?
Gosh, it used to be so easy at the time. We didn't think it was that easy, but of course it was. I mentioned the neighborhood opposition. That's been a big trend. I'm in the burger segment, so there's lots of burgers in just about every intersection that has retail, the Walmarts, the Targets, the daily need stuff. Where we want to be, there's already a burger. So, we try to pioneer it and get out there first, and restrict what we can. But that's gotten much more complicated because there's so many people that have come into the fray. And I'll say, just to make it quite current, there are some users, specifically out west, like Raising Cane's and Chick-fil-A, and In-N-Out has always been out there, just kind of writing blank checks in terms of what they'll pay in rent. So some of the rent, we're enjoying, great sales really at the brand. I think COVID's been very good to the QSR industry, and some of these rents that the other folks that I mentioned are paying are just well above market, and just the complexity that brings to the rest of us. We can't compete in that arena.
Yeah. What about you, Cheryl? What do you think?
Same thing. What I can bring to the table is I can do something fairly small. So I don't need, the big three that Lisa mentioned, and then we can throw Starbucks into the mix because they're very aggressive right now with what they'll pay, especially for converting an existing QSR. They just want the drive-through. So they're very, very aggressive. But once if I found that if a developer doesn't get a Chick-fil-A, a Raising Cane's, or an In-N-Out, typically they'll come down to the next tier, which is what I sit within. And then I'm even probably half the footprint of a McDonald's from a spacing and size. So maybe they've got an acre and a half. So McDonald's might need, call it 35,000. And I can probably, if we have driveways that are shared, we can probably do 2 uses on an acre and a half, where In-N-Out's probably needing 2 acres now to do anything because cities are really onto them. So even though they're paying these premiums and they do have sales to support it, they need a lot of land because the cities know that I heard the last In-N-Out deal was approved. They needed a 38 car stack. I mean, think what that does to your parking, your center, and if you're trying to put it in with someone else. So there's a lot of people that are saying, I don't want a Chick-fil-A or an In-N-Out to mess up the parking and the circulation of my center.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you ladies, shifting gears a little bit. As an outside broker or a mid-level or junior broker looking in, trying to elevate their career, make an impact, maybe somebody that hasn't been to ICSC or is trying to figure out how to be relevant. What can those brokers or developers do to bring value to you guys? Is there anything that really could help somebody differentiate themselves to get on top of the hundreds of emails and phone calls that you receive to say, hey, this guy's got the right idea, or gal?
Right. We do get a lot of submittals, just cold submittals via email. And honestly, none of us have enough time to sort all those and go through them. A lot of times, if you do sit down and look at them, late in the day or, kind of as part of your end of the week task, there's a McDonald's right across the street. So it's like, somebody didn't even do any research to determine that I'm already in that marketplace. So that kind of drives me crazy. It's like, I'm probably not going to respond to the other emails you're going to send me. I think it's important to understand, a lot of times I know El Pollo Loco, McDonald's doesn't have preferred brokers per market, but there's usually a very strong broker that's working the market for us. So I think, if you've got a great site that you're representing, to get it in front of the people that can get it in front of the deal maker, you're way ahead. And it isn't just coming cold to someone who doesn't know your name. So I would certainly recommend that you find out who the stakeholders are and sort of predetermine what the level of interest should be, from a spacing standpoint, particularly for a brand like McDonald's with 14,000 existing domestic locations. You certainly need to figure out on your own, is this a perceived gap in customer base, or do I need to put in my email, hey, this is across the street from you, but I've noticed you haven't remodeled. It still has the, older mansard roof, for example. You see that, there's either a situation with the lease, because we're 95% modernized at the McDonald's brand. So unit that isn't remodeled, we probably are looking to relocate it, or there's something else going on.
Would say the highest energy task is the critical thinking. So trying to help process through all of the data and point out the high level benefits, it sounds like just helping you work through that analysis a little bit further.
Yeah, exactly.
And I concur with a lot of what Lisa said. I will tell you though, that given the tenure that I have, I used to get kind of, well, I'm right across the street. Why would they send me this? But now I kind of, in support of what Lisa said as well, if they made the effort to know that I'm right across the street and put it in their email and then told me what it is, I think if they say, hey, this has really good, demographics, there's a brand new Walmart planned here. This is a patent, if they give me more information than just submitting a site without giving me why they think it would be a good fit. So I think that kind of rises, them to the top of my list when they take the effort, especially if they do tell me, I know you're a block away, but it looks like an old tired restaurant that has limited parking, and this might provide you some upside because it's a brand new, pad with more parking, better circulation. Maybe there's the median that's been built that's affecting access to the older restaurant. So yeah, anytime they personalize it, or I know that they've actually looked at my restaurants where they are and feel that this is a whole for me and why it's a whole and why I should consider it. Those are all that really resonates with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what is an ideal site submission look like for both of you? Because we get this all the time is.
Yeah, do you guys like 3 mile rings, or is that too much noise? You
Well,
know?
and not only that, just the amount, so you want them to go into detail, but you don't want to necessarily write a
A
novel,
novel.
right? Because
Yeah.
you guys are getting hundreds of emails. So for those individuals out there that could be listening to this, that have a site that they may want to put in front of, you know, y'all or any other real estate manager of a large corporation, what kind of makes an ideal site submission?
I like to see the site plan, obviously with the streets and traffic counts if possible. I'm only looking at 1 and 2 mile demographics.
Okay.
Because beyond that, you know, if we're fully built out, we're gonna have another restaurant, you know, probably every 1.5 to 2 miles, depending on the density. Again, I also, I like to be part of, you know, a center. I don't really like to be on my own. And I definitely would love to have what they're asking and what the delivery time and condition is.
Those two last ones, those are probably the most missed, I would say.
I
Mhm.
know. So
Mhm.
only because, you know, I mean, because they could say, oh, we're asking 60,000 a year, but they're not going to bring any utility, you know, and, you know, depending on where you are logistically. So Southern California, you know, the sewer and water costs are extraordinary.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, so that's what I would say. I would say, you know, 1, 2 mile snapshot. And I just would like to see residential and employee population. I'd like to see the age, the income. I don't know. I look for, you know, as much information so I can kind of, and of course, we both probably have, I'm sure Lisa does too. We have our own internal mapping that we can plot it, but it's nice that if you've got it, you know, you don't have to, you know, plot everything. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have another question for you guys. Are you interfacing with developers in your particular role? Or are you working more with brokers, franchise operators? Or are there developers calling you guys saying, hey, listen, we've got the capacity to build for you guys, want to get on your radar? Is that anything that would bring value to you? Are you guys having those conversations?
McDonald's really has their own in-house construction team and development
Yeah.
team. So no, is the easy answer to that here. I think every once in a while, if they're taking down land, it's 5 acres and we really need 1.
Yeah.
There could be a preferred developer brought in. It's pretty rare anymore, but we've certainly done that on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, Lisa, people don't understand that unless they've seen the movie with Michael Keaton from a year or 2 ago, that McDonald's really is a real estate company that ancillary sells burgers.
Right, right. And it's interesting because when she was talking about the complexity of the franchise piece, we have, of course, owner operators. We're 92%, I think, run by owner operators, which is what we call our franchisees. But the real estate transaction is no different. So if you're leasing something, and even if it eventually does get operated by an owner operator, more than likely will, the transaction is still with corporate. The ground lease is signed by McDonald's corporate. It's one of the strongest, I think, ground lease signature in the industry, or it's being purchased by corporate. So that is a nuance to a McDonald's deal that is really, really it set us apart.
Yeah, gotcha.
How I'm curious, because again, you guys kind of talked about internal mapping. What we're seeing really like in real time in our space right now is just kind of the evolution of technology when it comes to site selection. And I'm curious, when it comes to submittals, are you guys finding value in technology like Placer AI, where it's more cell phone visit data? And there's a plethora of other ones, Buxton, etc. Do you guys look at, I mean, you obviously look at that data. Do you ever rely on that data? Do you always look to your internal data and that's really it? What's kind of your thoughts as far as technology has evolved, and is it in alignment typically with the site when it's submitted to you?
So,
Yeah, go ahead, Cheryl.
so we do rely on internal, and Clay, I just renewed my Restaurant Trends contract. You'll be happy to know. So maybe I'll give you, I'll share some secrets with you. But and Restaurant Trends is a company that actually through various sources, whether it's sales tax reporting or personal visits or fees paid to various agencies, guesstimates the sales of competitors that are in their program. So In-N-Out is not, doesn't play in that arena, and nor does, I don't think Panda does either, but there's quite a few of chicken Mexican burgers that do. And that data is in our mapping program. So when we plot a site and we run the 1-2, it's a 1-2-3 mile ring, but we look at the 2 mile ring mostly. We look and see how the competitors are performing in that 2 mile ring, which then says, gosh, if they're all performing at or above average, we should too. So this will probably be a good location for us, combined with the demographics and things of that sort. But with Placer AI, I haven't gotten to that, but I think our marketing and maybe higher ups have looked at that, because I know that became a big thing with COVID, because the way people traded changed during COVID. And with El Pollo Loco, we are just a lunch dinner, and we were about a 50-50 split. When COVID hit, we became that the lunch day part kind of dissipated, but the dinner day part increased because people were needing to eat and didn't want to eat at home every night. And we have a really good take-home meal replacement. It's, a chicken meal, flame grilled chicken with all the sides, which is a healthier approach to what else is out there. So that, so I know that Placer AI played a role. We also got, as everyone got, very good with their apps, their digital apps, where you can order online and drive up and they'll bring it out to you. So you don't even have to, go through a drive-through or do any of that. And so, Chipotle was way ahead of the game and did that Chipotle now. So it's not a true drive-through. There's no menu board, but you order it on the app and you drive up to their window and you say, my number's, 25, whatever. And then they hand out your order. So everybody's gone to apps.
Yeah, it's interesting how, Lisa mentioned this earlier, but how crowded and more competitive the environment almost got overnight because of that. And now everyone, like we have, I believe it's the first Denny's in the entire nation that just opened up here, like last week, 2 weeks ago, with a drive-through. And it's like you're seeing all these different users now going to drive-through, and if it's as convenient, right, as a QSR, it just makes site selection and obviously securing sites that much more competitive in the real estate space. So it's interesting.
Is that a new Denny's?
It was actually, it was an IHOP that closed and got repurposed into a Denny's. So
and is that Roland? Is that the guy that bought all the Denny's from the guy there? No.
Different franchisee.
Interesting.
So, but it's in a really growing part of the market, and I don't know how it's doing. It's still too young to tell, but like you said with Chipotle, I mean, we have a Chipotle here now that has the drive-through lane, and I mean the app, I used it admittedly last night. It's literally as simple as 2 clicks and your whole meal's ordered, and you go by there and pick it up and you're on your way, so it's really
it's super easy. And I use everyone's app just to, number one, always, McDonald's app, if you ever use that, there's always something free, always. And my second favorite four-letter word after food is free.
What about you, Lisa? I mean, are you guys, when you get site submittals with placer data, are you guys, do you look into that? I mean, is it relevant? And the reason I'm asking is because it's expensive software, you
Yeah.
know. So from the brokerage side of it, we find it of value, but I'm really curious from the retailer perspective if you guys find it of value.
Yeah, well, McDonald's, I think because we have 14,000 existing domestic locations, we have our own sales set. We have our own, like, we know where we do well and where we don't, and we group the surrounding stores into smaller groups for analysis. And we have our own in-house mapping system that is state of the art. There's a team of people that all they do is keep enhancing that system, and they use all kinds of data. It's really remarkable. Things like restaurant trends that I've always used everywhere I've worked. We don't incorporate that in. We don't look at how competitors do because we have so many units ourselves. So we're way more likely to gauge it based on our own performance in a given area of a zip code, as opposed to relying on how competitors do. But the mass mobile data, which is what we call that, the cell phone location services data that tells you, you know, where someone was at night, where someone was during the day, and where they went just before they came to the restaurant. You know, we do use that. We order reports like that as needed for various things that we're doing in real estate. So it's very interesting. The technology keeps changing. It is very expensive, but it's a critical aspect to reaching the right customer. You have to change with it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And the reason I asked the question is because oftentimes, and I've seen this, and it's worked both ways, where you're working with a corporation and, we always argue what the technology says isn't always correct, and a lot of it has to do with what we talked about earlier, where it could be there's a lot happening underneath the surface that technology can't pick up right now. There's massive housing development getting entitled. There's a massive power center development that could be going up. So it's interesting when you're doing site selection for corporations and you're analyzing it and you're trying to get it, through committee and everything else, how difficult it is sometimes that you do rely on technology to a certain extent, but sometimes it could work against you. And I think at the end of the day, like you guys were saying earlier, I mean, still getting on the ground, seeing the site, seeing the dynamics, seeing the traffic flow, seeing the type of consumers, seeing the demographic of the consumers, all play a role into what makes a successful site. But sometimes you are fighting technology these days, I mean, you can't, like you've been in the business for decades. I mean, back in the day, you guys were very reliant on what was being told.
AAA maps with dots.
Yeah.
Oh, and just
driving with a tape recorder and then mapping it out afterwards.
So it's evolved and changed a lot.
Even when Clayton and I started, he'd drive around in his truck with his phone and take a video as he was driving down the road and send it on a Dropbox link. I said, wow, that's how you do a virtual tour.
There
He was
you
doing
go,
it before we needed virtual
There you
tours.
go. So
So that's very interesting.
it's changed a
I've
lot.
always thought you were cutting edge, Clayton.
I try, but it really is. It's moving quick. So,
And as we are wrapping up, I know we could ask so many more questions, but I want to be sensitive to our time here. What would make a 2022 a good year for each of you? What are your goals? What would you say? All right, I accomplished. That's a strong year. Coming out of the pandemic and moving into a new world here. Are you guys optimistic, and what are you looking forward to, and what's going to make a strong 2022 for each of you?
Yeah, McDonald's is very focused on growth right now. I'm not really at liberty to disclose big numbers, but we are beefing up our team. There's now hiring really across the ICSC website and LinkedIn and places like that. We are beefing up the team. We do have a lot of growth left to do. we're really enjoying sales success right now. So it's a really great time to do it. Deals are taking longer. So, for me, I think for 22 for the brand, we want to get some of our new deals open, and we want to fill our hopper with a lot of great quality sites.
Excellent.
And similar, I mean, I see 2022 is a year of growth. We've kind of been stalled by COVID and all of the, issues I shared with earlier, hoping that those things kind of correct as we go into 2022. On a personal note, though, if I did win the, Mega Millions jackpot, I would give up the dream and let someone else have all the fun I'm having.
We can keep trying, Cheryl. We can keep trying. So I have kind of a question that I'd like to ask both of you, because it's something that Gannon and I are both up against quite often. And I know there's a lot of people that wonder this, but if you've ever been to an ICSC or any other convention, right, there's thousands of other brokers in a black and blue suit and a tie. And what, in your opinion, makes a really good broker? What do you look for? What qualities when it comes to representation? Because I say that kind of kidding, but not really. I mean, it's extremely competitive, and especially for really quality, good accounts, and to work with, obviously high quality folks like y'all. What do you guys look for? What are the key traits that you're looking for when it comes to, securing a quality representation in a market?
Yeah, I would just say that be proactive and be prepared. Schedule a 30-minute meeting with the person that you want to meet with. I mean, I don't think I've ever turned anyone down unless they were in, Portland, and I had no authority in that particular market. I mean, some young person wants to schedule 30 minutes, get on my calendar and come to my booth, and I'll give you 30 minutes, even if the answer is, hey, I can't help you right now. I think so. Be proactive, and then, be prepared. I mean, I remember when I met you, Clay, the first time, you sat down and you had a map of where you thought, the brand I was working for at the time should be in your market. You kind of unfolded it, or I don't know if it was an iPad, I can't remember, but you were so prepared that I remember thinking, gosh, when we get from an expansion standpoint to that market, half the work is already done. You've impressed me with, all the pre-work that you put in to the meeting. And then of course, it's always good to follow up afterwards.
Yeah.
Not in a badgering sort of way where you phone call, but where you just sort of maybe follow up, attach the map again and say, hey, hold on to this, if you will, when you get a chance to do something in this marketplace.
Yep.
I think that's memorable.
So just plan and be well prepared. And what I always tell people is your goal is to always try to just add value to that individual. So what about you, Cheryl? Because you're a
very
little more
similar. Yeah, I would say though, I'm a big proponent of when I come into a market, I want a broker in the market. I know lots of brands have kind of gone through these, oh, we want a national broker, and then you're stuck with whoever that is. I want the best broker in the market, and somebody who knows the market, which, I can just speak for you in Albuquerque. I mean, I felt like any question I ever had, you would answer it. I don't think you ever said, I don't know on anything I asked. And even though we bring all these tools that they give us, our job as foot soldiers are to validate where they say we should be. And they may say we should be at a certain place. And we're like, well, I'm not really sure why they say that, because it's shifting north, south, east, west, or there's a big project being planned. And that's why having a broker that knows his market, it makes me look good. I mean, I want the broker to be driving, when the executives come into town and talk about, who's active, who's not active. So really just someone who's in touch with what's happening in their market. And that's why I think it's critical to have just someone working, living, breathing in the market be my resource.
What do you feel most brokers do wrong when representing companies?
Mm,
I don't know that I think that they do anything wrong. I think the one thing is I do think some brokers, even though they know that you're being represented by someone, they constantly try and go around or
Yeah.
submit directly to you. I know McDonald's doesn't have the same, we have, preferred brokers that we use, and I make it known because I'm one person and I can only go so far. So it's nice because if they submit something, I just forward it to my broker and copy them and to say, hey, I forwarded this to my broker and we'll get back to you with any interest. And then he can then call, or she can call and get, all those things I said. What's the delivery time? What's the amount? How's it going to be delivered? What do you need to make the deal? Because I don't want to spend time working on a deal when you need 5 other pads to make before anything's going to happen. So
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
I think what I've seen just from a representation standpoint is, I find it, and I can imagine being you guys, but when brokers don't listen to what you're saying as to why a site wouldn't work, and they're just so determined on, no, this is the right site for you. And that's happened to me several times when I just say it's not on our development plan. And they'll just go on and just continue to try to beat me down as to why I'm wrong and they're right. And I can imagine being you guys, because you have to hear that quite often. So
yeah, it gets really old. I've got a couple economic developers that, just, I guess I'm on their tickler every 6 months. They call you up and it's like, I've run your demographics. I mean, unless you've got a giant, employer and residential following that under construction, you don't meet our minimum criteria. You respectfully tell them that, but every ICSC they're in line to talk to you again, and every whatever. That does get a little bit old. The only thing I'd say on brokers is some of them do try to spread themselves too thin. Oh, I can help you in that market too, or I can help you there too. And I understand. I think you wait and say that when you've got a great relationship with, with your REM, and but to market yourself as I can do all of this, tends to make me believe, well, I don't know that you could do any of it, because it sounds like you're trying to take on too much and you're not an expert in the market where you live, which is really what you need.
yeah, completely agree. It's easy to do when you're a broker.
Yeah.
You want to take it all.
We like to sell.
I could do that too. So, well, you guys again are it's just such a valuable source of information, and we loved having you on the show. And we really, like I said, wanted to give our listeners a perspective from an actual real estate manager versus always hearing from developers and other brokers.
Yeah.
So thanks again for making the time to come on the show. Hope you enjoyed it. And if someone does want to get in contact with you guys, we will put your contact information in the show notes if there are any other questions. But thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you both.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
We really enjoyed it. I did, for sure.
Yeah, this was great fun. Great to see everybody. Bring us some great sites. That's what we want.